Good evening, members of the public, staff, fellow commissioners. I'd like to call the meeting to order with first the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you rise? Virtual flag. Well, we'll pretend that it's. Okay, we'll talk this.
You're facing your.
Okay, this one. United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do the roll call, please. Present.
Commissioner Brazenio,
Present.
Commissioner Farrell,
Present.
Commissioner Geddes, Commissioner Jones,
Present.
Commissioner McDonald,
Present.
Commissioner Santos. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, community forum. Anyone wishes to address the committee from public?
We do not have anyone.
Through the chair, we do not have any members of the public online either.
Thank you. Item 5, consent calendar and approval of agenda. Do we need a motion or? Yes. Just,
You would need a motion, and this is, since this is consent calendar, it can
Okay.
be done with a single motion to approve both items.
So moved.
Seconded.
Vice Chair Tibet,
yes?
Commissioner Brazenio,
Yes.
Commissioner Farrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones, Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Santos. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6, report of the committee board secretary.
Just briefly, I want to introduce the two commissioners, the two new commissioners. We have Commissioner Santos, and then we have Commissioner McDonald. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
And item 7, report of the city attorney.
Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Item 8, report of the city council liaison.
He is at the flood and wastewater meeting and will arrive when that meeting ends.
Okay. We could revisit item 8 when he arrives. Moving on to number 9, report of the chairperson and members of the committee boards. I do not have anything as the vice chair to report right now. Anybody else? Any of the members?
I'd like to ask a point of order question. Is this a place where we can nominate our chair? Oh, it's the next item.
It's the next item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item 10, and it's the election of chair for Measure P committee.
Vice Chair, if I might, I'd like to nominate Kanat Tibet to serve as chair of the Measure P Oversight Committee.
I second that motion.
Well, that was a nomination. So there's a second for the nomination, and then you're going to vote to elect.
Well, should we ask him if he wants it?
Yes,
that might be a
thank
good
you. I'm
question.
honored. Thank you.
So if you want to turn your motion into a motion to appoint him as chair, you could do that, and that would be that.
Yeah, So amended.
Okay.
Second amended.
Vice Chair Tibet,
Yes.
Commissioner Brazenio,
Yes.
Commissioner Farrell,
Absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Santos. Thank you. Congratulations.
And we'll have the vice chair position on a subsequent meeting. That was an oversight on our part.
Okay, so we were vice chairless until the next
We,
meeting.
we are, just like we were chairless before.
Yes. Okay. So thank you. I'm honored. I will do my best, very best to be as transparent, honest, and concise. So moving on to item 10B. It is adopt a resolution recommending or, in all the alternative, not recommending that the city council authorizes $1,501,862 of Measure P funds to partially fund an agreement with Felton Institute for the iHeart program.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jason Time, the Vallejo Chief of Police. So tonight I'm going to provide you kind of a summary update on this request. In the audience, I have Curtis Penn. He's the Division Director for Felton, which is kind of the overall company that runs the iHeart program. And then Rayvon Williamson, he is our program manager as well in the audience. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know there are two new commissioners, so I don't know if I'm gonna be as dynamic as Deputy Chief Knight was the last time you guys heard from him, but I will do my best. But I'm gonna provide just a quick kind of a overview for the new commissioners, just so they have a sense of how this program came to be in existence and kind of where we are today. So in 2022, we received a grant from Byrne Community Projects. And that grant really allowed us two different buckets of funding. One portion of that funding was to actually develop the program. So we used a consultant and we had him kind of guide us and organize us to develop the program that we have here today. The other portion of that funding was for operational cost. And so the first bucket I failed to mention was also to get the equipment that we needed for the program. So the vehicles, everything in the vehicles, the garments that they wear to identify themselves as iHeart and some of those equipment costs. That program started in April of 2024. And then the second portion of that money was really for the cost of employees. So we used the next portion from April 2024 to April 2025. So in May and June, we experienced a funding gap. So we had to kind of pivot for a moment and figure out how we were going to fund May and June. May and June partially was funded by SLUF funds, so that's supplemental law enforcement funding stream, as well as some opioid funding. And then tonight, what we're asking of you all is to consider approval for the city council to authorize 1.5 million of Measure P funds to partially fund an agreement with Felton Institute for the iHeart program. So during the assessment, when we first started with the consultant, the assessment revealed the demand for field-based programs and mental health services, where law enforcement may not be the appropriate first responders. So during the formation, VPD worked in partnership with community members, local nonprofits, and other stakeholders to develop the program we have here today, the iHeart program. So a lot of thought was given to how we can bring a program in to augment the county services. We did not want to replace them and compete with what they were providing in terms of services, but we wanted to have a team that kind of did something in the middle. Some of the stats that we reviewed, we noticed that 8 out of the 10 calls that we believed were mental health related really didn't require county response. So we were really focusing on those 8 other calls. The 2 calls that required the county assistance, then we would then contact the county and then transfer over those clients to the county. So this team was designed to reduce, and it has shown to reduce the need for police presence at certain nonviolent calls for service. So I'm going to go into some of the figures, and then I'll kind of close with how what our strategy moving forward is to help support the program. So this slide here depicts the first year contract. So that's the original contract with Felton. And as we move into the second year, there's a difference in some of the expenses. So you can see the personnel costs, the operational costs, and the indirect costs for year 1. You can also see the corresponding associated costs for year 2. So the first year, the average cost for the program was about $76,000. We do anticipate with the new contract that average cost is going to be $125 monthly moving into year 2. I'm going to break down some of the costs here. Next slide, Manny. So this is a breakdown of Felton's personnel costs. So again, you can see the original contract numbers on the left, and you can see the new contract, which we are still working on the right. So it's essentially the same figures. So if you look at the first row, that's for the EMTs and crises workers, roughly 7 full-time employees, 1 program manager. In year 2, the admin assistant is going from 0.5 full-time employee to 1.0, mental health rehab specialists, and then division director. So that's Mr. Penn over here to my right. So the
You want-
operational costs, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, do you want us to ask questions now or wait?
There's only a couple of slides. If I can just kind of run through this and we can do questions at the end. So operational personnel costs for year 1, $844,463, and operational cost for the second year contract is estimated at 1.1. Moving to operational costs. Next slide, Manny. Same thing, side-by-side comparison. So if you look at just the rows, you'll see the office expenses, technology, miscellaneous costs, training costs, and market and outreach. So original contract was approximately 68,000, and the new contract we're working on is approximately 72,000. Next slide, Manny. It should be shortfall. There should be 1 slide in between that, Manny. If you can't get it, I can just verbally. Okay, there is 1 missing slide. So the slide really kind of shows what we're asking for your recommendation, which is 1.5 for the second year contract. Our intent, though, is we have been approved for a Protect to Connect grant, and that is roughly 254,000. So our plan really is to use grant funding wherever we can use it to be fiscally responsible. So the shortfall would be 1.2. And I think that was maybe the figure that was brought up at the last meeting. I'm not positive. But in the event, we've seen some unexpected things happening with the new administration. This is a program that I feel is critically necessary. And so having that approval for the entire amount and using grant funding Where it's appropriate, we'll save the city money, but also keep the program stable in the event that we have some unexpected cuts to our grants. So with that, I can take questions.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. You know, I think all of us agree that this is an amazing program and we're happy to have it in Vallejo. Hey, Manny, can you bring up the personal cost breakdown slide? Grazie. Okay, so I just have a couple questions. I'm an operations person. So the 1,140 hours, 11,440 hours for the EMT, that is 5.5 FTEs. So now it's going to 7 FTEs, which was about 14,560 hours.
Are you using the 12-hour?
I'm using 2080, which is what a person would if they were a salaried person working 40 hours a week. It's 2080 hours.
Yeah, so the new proposal is for 7 FTE. I don't have the number of FTE to correspond with the 11,440. I don't know,
Okay.
Curtis, if you had.
Yep. Well, we can hear you, but I don't know if everybody else can.
On the microphone.
Yeah.
Tricked both of us. Yes.
So to answer your question, we have increased for this proposed budget, the total FTE from 5.5 to 7 FTE, and that's just for the EMT, Community Response Specialist.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. And then the mental health rehab specialist, you're reducing it from 1 FTE to a half a person?
Looks like that's correct. 1 FTE to a 0.5 FTE, because a lot of the community response specialists have the mental health first aid training, and they can support the mental health rehabilitation specialists in providing crisis intervention.
Okay, so it's based on the last year, the historical. why
Correct,
you're
the
reducing.
trends.
Okay, good. Division director. You had and I get it, it's oversight. But why is it going even to half of what you have this time? Is that, but then the dollar amount is more.
Yes, that's essentially because of my salary. However, my divisional oversight is with respect to the entire agency. And so I have been spending a little bit more time with divisional oversight for iHeart for obvious reasons, connecting with the chief as well as the deputy chief, and supporting the program manager, Rayvon Williamson, as well.
Do we get the same amount of time this year?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's not what the slide says. The slide says it's actually half. We cut it in half.
Yes, we cut it in half in order to make amends for the budget, but my time essentially is on a need basis. This is why I'm here now. So I essentially work 7 days a week, roughly 20 hours a day. So it's a lot of time.
I get it. Hey, Manny, can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, okay. Office expenses, why are they reduced?
Because the city incurred a lot of those expenses. As
Okay.
they mentioned, we utilized a space from code enforcement that the city had provided. And so we realized that a lot of the monies that we expected or anticipated to need, we did not actually have to use.
Okay.
for
And then that
office
money just got
expenses.
reallocated to
Correct.
personnel and stuff
Yes, yes,
for last year. Okay, great. Technology and phones, I'm assuming you had implementation costs and now you don't have that this year.
correct.
Okay. Client-related expenses, last year you had 15, this year you have 40. Just understanding what's included. I understand you're probably seeing what is needed, what you need to purchase, just trying to understand what's in it.
Yeah, much of that is around barrier removal. I know last fiscal year, we fell short on some of those expenses in terms of being able to provide a robust level of crisis intervention and wraparound case management services. And so we want to just make sure that we are able to serve the population in need. And in addition to that, the cost went up is because we really expanded our level of services across the board in terms of geographical location, in terms of demographics as well. As you noted in the initial presentation, we're going into schools, we're doing wellness workshops, doing community collaboration, and so we really expand our footprint in the city of Vallejo in terms of doing this work.
So what's included in there is a lot of the community outreach and going to the school.
Correct.
And all, that's great.
Yes.
Say a little bit more about the barrier removal?
Yeah, let Rayvon come up. I can say a lot about the barrier removal, but Rayvon can speak to more of the granular component of it, and I'll fill in if.
Good evening, everyone. So for us, the barrier removal has a lot to do with that initial contact. So you read, we encounter an individual who may be in a heightened state, whatever that looks like. So that individual may need food, clothing, emergency housing, things of that nature before we can even begin to address like the larger issue. So for us, being able to arrive at a situation, assess what those immediate needs are, and having the ability to address those immediate needs. For us, that's the, the immediate barrier or the barrier removal aspect of our engagement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Monica, can I ask a quick question? Just, it's more.
Microphone, please.
I'm sorry, Monica, can I get a little bit of point of order question just in terms of when the audience can engage and ask questions and when they can fill out their forms to participate in this conversation?
Generally, after the presentation is completed is when that happens, so.
Sorry, do the commissioners speak first or does the public speak first?
It's fairly informal here, as long as the public gets an opportunity. If the commission wants to hear from the public now, of course you can. That's up to you.
I would just like to encourage members from the public who may have things to say about this topic to sign up and pass your cards to Monica if you'd like to participate in this conversation.
There are no cards right now, just as FYI.
Right, at this time, there are no speaker cards that have been submitted to me.
And I just have one more question
Thank
about
you.
the, so the marketing and outreach, that also declined in your budget. So it went from 7 to 3. What's changing?
Yeah, again, is to, be more intentional in terms of the overall budget, but we've been really, creative in our way of marketing the program. Rayvon, as well as the administrative manager, has utilized a lot of the community stakeholder in getting the word out, as well as our partners with Vallejo PD. And, as we continue to grow and move forward, looking at the way in which we engage the community, we've been able to increase our ability to broaden our footprint without having a lot of the marketing tools that we initially had anticipated, because you figured this was kind of a pilot program when we started, and so we just want to make sure that we're being fiscally sound as we move forward to the next fiscal year.
Okay. Those were my questions. Thank you.
If I can just also add, with respect to the barrier removal, to Rayvon's point, a lot of the social and psychological determinants that are associated with folks from marginalized communities, it often takes a number of touch points to get them to the point to where they can get connected to a primary care physician. If they have legal barriers, if they have educational barriers, Oftentimes, folks from marginalized communities do not have the same access to normal programs that folks would have otherwise. And so that's type of the barrier removals that we use to support this particular population.
Thank you so much. I really feel like I've seen you guys in the community. I know you do amazing work. I visited your facility at 2 Florida and sent many clients there. So thank you for everything you guys do.
I have a subsequent question regarding the mental health rehab specialist. What just clarification, what I'm seeing here is for one full-time employee for that position, the salary paid last year was $107,200. Now, the position is being cut to half full-time employee, but the salary is not getting reduced by 50%, but it's even increasing to $118,000. So are we planning to pay an individual for half-time work $118,000?
With respect to the mental health rehabilitation specialist, there was a lot of training and credentialing involved in this particular employee. And there's a cost associated with it when you are working with individuals with mental health crises, with respect to doing proper assessments, intake assessments, ANZAs, working with minors. And so we had to level up with respect to this particular individual, their training. And as you perhaps know, clinical staff are very challenging to retain because we're competing against the county. And so in order to retain this individual, we would need to increase their salary so they would stay on board. That's kind of the par for the course for clinical staff, unfortunately. They're few and far between.
Sure, but in your opinion, is the amount, the salary on par with similar positions across the county?
Yes, it's probably much below. Typically, someone at BBS registered, Board of Behavioral Science registered, clinical staff are making upwards of 160 to 170.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Can I ask some question? People coming here, I already watched the movie before. Oh, I'm sorry.
It was on.
I'm so sorry. I am a newly appointed commissioner, so I have many questions, but I already watched the May 6th video of your presentation. It's really very good. I have no question about your presentation because it's comprehensive, excellent, and impressive presentation. But my question here, I don't know if it has been answered about the budgetary requirement, how you came out with the amount. Is it sufficient, you supply the detail? And also, and it also includes staff, right? The payment for the staff salary? Yeah, but the Measure P, I look into the Measure P, it look into the budget. I mean, on the April 29, the number 9, I found out Mr. Farrell said Measure P funds has not been discussed not to be used for salary or fleet. This one thing. Okay. But I just want to be clarified about this because, I want to learn more about iHeart.
Right. So what we had talked about is that we would not be supplying staffing in perpetual. So meaning I am not going to be, meaning us, Measure P, are not going to be funding anybody's salary for, like Monica. We're not going to pay for Monica's salary every year after year after year. This is what we discussed on, was it last week?
Yeah.
Last week was we would look to fund them for 1 year because the funding and everything else, as the federal government and all the grants and everything is being stripped. We need to find funding for this, but we would fund them for 1 year
So after that.
and 1 year only. And that is what we were looking to do.
Yeah,
But
and-
not, because we do not want this program to leave Vallejo. And we think it is a vital piece of Vallejo that helps keep our community safe, helps keep the, you know, keep everybody safe, including the people that are in need, and helps them get to a better position where they could get the help that they need, and get them into a better place. So that's why this program is, that's why we said, yes, let's try to fund this program for 1 year, where we looked at the police and said, 1 year, and you got, everybody was going to say, yes, we're going to get grants and figure out the funding for ongoing years and hopefully grow the program even further.
I want to ask a question about that answer that I just heard. This board made a decision to go against the initial intent for Measure P.
No,
So if I may interject, very good questions. So when the city does an RFP for a budget auditor, they get the auditor's program. We do not look at the salaries of who's making how much off of the city's contract. So we perceived this last week as it is a dire need to fund this program, not salaries. But then we asked for a granular information about why is it 1.5? We want to see where it is going. So you get to see the salaries. The same practice is not necessarily done for any contracting programs. So we're perceiving this as a program. The decision is yours, but we're perceiving this as a program that is in dire need to be funded for 1 year, not in perpetuity. And we address the presenters that actually they would need to find funding to replace what is not going to come from Measure P next year. So we made that very clear. Our perception as the previous committee or commission was, we're funding a program that is highly needed and is providing an invaluable service to the city of Vallejo.
If I could add to that, the council has identified 9 priorities for use of Measure P funds. Crime prevention and serving the unhoused are 2 of those 9 priorities. During the campaign in support of Measure P, there was quite a bit of discussion about whether the money could be used for staff positions, which would be permanently funded through Measure P. An earlier sales tax measure passed by the city to repair streets and address other unmet needs had been used for city staff salaries in perpetuity, and that had eaten up all of that sales tax revenue, is my understanding of our history. Because of that use of the money from that earlier sales tax, a city sales tax measure was defeated in 2020 because of angry voters who thought the city violated its promise not to use the money for salaries. So Measure P got adopted in 2022, and there has been a precedent that has been established by our committee that it is appropriate for personnel costs to be considered for 1 year, but not permanent funding. Permanent funding also involves more rapid increases in costs than the city revenue increases due to the cost of pension benefits, medical coverage, and salary increases. And so we are not thus far willing to permanently fund any positions, including for iHeart. And although iHeart is a consultant, your offices are in a city facility and you have city vehicles. And so there's a legal difference, but you're pretty much a part of the city staff, even though you're an independent contractor legally. So that's a little bit of our history.
But let me dovetail onto that. So where they are an extension and they partner with our team, they're not going to be funded by Vallejo ongoing. So it's almost like we're looking at, this is a contract with a third-party vendor that we will not be incurring retirement and ongoing costs and all that stuff, right? They are taking that, they gave us a loaded price, that's how much they're charging. This is similar, if not the same, almost as approving a road project. Because all of that, they're contracting out to someone else, or the Public Works is contracting out to have our roads paved. We don't look at their salaries. This is an anomaly that we're doing this. And I don't want to make that a standard either. But we're just saying, yes, you need to contract out. You need to get these roads repaired. In this instance, we're saying, yes, we need the police department to contract out with iHeart in order to provide this service. We are not saying that, and we said we would do it for 1 year. But no, we're not saying it's similar. We would normally never look at anybody's salary.
Ask a question, please. Yeah, you said provide for the salary for 1 year, but we should be accountable to the public because we already mentioned that it should not be funded, the salary. So how can we compromise or justify to the taxpayer that for 1 year, when in fact it's already very clear for the Measure P that we should not fund the salary?
We're not funding the salary.
What is it?
We're funding the contract. We are not, the city of Vallejo and the Vallejo Police are not hiring anyone.
Which limits our liability.
Right.
Okay.
And we're not, yeah, exactly. We're not going to be paying for them in
Okay, good.
perpetuity or anything.
Okay.
But they need funding for this program. So we said, yeah, we're not going to hire these guys. You know, Felton's going to do that. They're responsible for all the people. And we're like, great. We understand that this is a major program for this, city. We want it to go forward. In order for it to do that, we need the help to get it.
I would add that we all recognize that in light of economic uncertainty, new harsh policies of the federal government, lack of state resources, that there's a serious possibility that there will be very, very intense pressure next year to fund this again. That's a reality right now. However, our principle that committee member Briceño just summarized is our precedent, and it is our policy, and there's no reason to reconsider it at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. You had it.
Okay. I want to say that it sounds like we're all really passionate about this, and we all really are amazed by the great work that's done by Felton. And I would really like to hear from the public, and
We have
You-
Jones.
You do have a speaker, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Okay.
Commissioner Jones, were you going to speak?
I'll speak after the speaker,
Thank
the
you.
public.
We do have two speakers. The first speaker is Zarek Bass from Vernus House.
Hello, everyone. I'm here from Vernus House. My name is Danielle Chilton. I'm a case manager there. I'm just here to speak about our partnership with iHeart and how great it is. And they provide individuals to us who are suffering from mental health. We provide housing for those individuals. We transition them. We talk to them about getting better. What are they going to do next? We provide beds for them, food, whatever they may need. If they think about getting jobs in the future, we try to, give them an opportunity to learn about that. And I just want to say we really appreciate the partnership that they do with us and that they bring us individuals to come stay there. Right now, we have 9 individuals who stay there, and they're doing great. And we want to continue to be able to do this for the public because we know that there's so many people out there who need housing, and there's so many homeless people in Vallejo who are suffering from mental health. And so we just want to continue partnership with iHeart and other organizations like that who are providing the individuals that need the help. So I just want to speak on that. I do have someone here. Dan is one of our individuals who does live at the residence right now. He's doing great, and we just want to continue that. He's going to come up here and just talk a little bit about what he receives from us and how good he's doing now. He's been with us, I guess, now for about 5 years. So
No.
about 4 years, 3 years, 3 years. Yes. So
Hi, folks. I wasn't homeless for a long time. About 2 years ago, I was living in Fairfield. They tripled my rent. So I started living in a truck. Well, then I got sick and things happened. Then I was in Fairfield. They asked me to leave, right? I got nowhere to go. So a guy that lived there gave me Dino and Danielle's number a year and a half ago. And he come pick me up, sight unseen. Didn't care the world. Didn't ask me about my background or nothing. And I tell you, wouldn't want to live anywhere else than Werner's house. They really do help people. And I've been around a bunch of the iHeart people too, and they're great people too. They stand up and they help us out too, right? We have a family there. I finally have a family. I'm from the East Coast. I don't have any family left. But all the people there are my family. I'm glad that I called Dino. Like I said, he come in the middle of the night, picked me up. Didn't know me from Adam. Never did a background check or nothing like that, just trusted me. And I told him when he picked me up, and Danielle was there, I said, man, I'll wash dishes, clean the house, do the toilets, everything around it. Anything I needed, anything you needed, I'll do. And it's turned out to be a great working partnership between me and Dino. Really has. We need funding for that. We need funding for more places like Werner's house, right? Because my Social Security, I don't know you guys, I retired, my Social Security is only $1,000 a month. But I can afford to live there. And I get food, I help out, and we have other guys that live there too, that I help them out.
yeah.
And like I said, a phone call to a man that didn't even know me, he came and helped me. So
Right.
Thank
So he made a
Thank-
great point about how it's a family environment and everyone's able to come together and chip in and do work that they weren't thinking about doing before, cleaning up. They're homeless. They're not thinking about working each day and providing for everybody. And I just think that it's a good environment to be in. And we need more places like Berna's House, and we need to stay in existence. And the only way to do that is with organizations like Our Heart and us getting funding as well. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
We do have another speaker, Kayla Menifee.
Good evening. My name is Kyla Menifee, and I am a Vallejo resident. I've lived here in Vallejo for 24 years, and I also work at Felton Institute. And I'm coming up to address the special conditions surrounding this request for funding that the existing commissioners may be aware of, but the new commissioners may not. And that is that this program was in, actually layoff notices went out to the employees. As I looked at Facebook posts of business owners that I've known for years who do business here in Vallejo, and they said that iHeart came and they dealt with situations where people without homes who were in mental health crisis were dealt with. As an employee of Felton, to hear that these layoff notices went out, people had to go and tell their families that we can't do it because the Vallejo Police Department couldn't identify the funds. So what we're not talking about here is operational costs and that type of thing. Doing the due diligence, financial due diligence, you ask those questions, but it was an emergency situation. And as we had the support of various council members and various people within the community, we were sent here to talk to the Measure P Oversight Committee about the available funds because of the crisis situation related to the funding. And what the $1.5 million is trying to prevent is that crisis from happening again. so that we can say that those funds are safeguarded. And as Vallejo PD identifies additional funds through grants or wherever, that those funds will be spent first, but this will secure the presence of the program, addressing the issues of homelessness, addressing the issues of folks committing suicide in their mother's home and our employees go out and stay with them, addressing the issue of homeless people who are having psychotic episodes in our businesses so that businesses will want to continue doing work here. So it's not a direct salary situation where they are looking at line upon line. They are trying to address with special funds, a special circumstance, an emergency crisis in terms of something that is really helpful and good for our community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the public comment. It's great to hear from us and from the other side. I feel like this is really a huge ask that is kind of last minute in my experience, and I'd really like to have more time to be able to think about some more details about this situation. For example, has the city put out a RFP for other providers? What community memorandums of understanding exist with communities that do this work, like House of Acts or Verna's House? Just so that we have a comprehensive understanding of the impact and of the that, to increase and commit $1.5 million of Measure P funding when I remember voting against Measure P funding, the idea that we were going to take more tax dollars and that to trust that the city would responsibly fix our potholes, support our schools. So I would like more information to ensure an equitable, transparent process where people have access to compete for the best practices. So yeah, those are some of the thoughts that are coming up for me.
Could I just make a comment on that? Because I do think all of that is important. When we did roll this program out, and we started this in 2022, there was a RFP process. There were a lot of different people that applied for this program. We sifted through and kind of filtered out, the people that we thought would be able to provide the program. Felton came in, and obviously they were selected. I won't speak for them, but they are in many different counties, I think 10. So they do this work all over, not just here. But we, coming into this with grant seed money, we didn't know if it was going to be successful. This is the first endeavor that I know of that a city has really dived into mental health and wraparound services the way the county typically does. So, this program to me has been very successful on year one. Felton was very helpful in pricing the service to the budget that we had to stay within. And the new budget numbers are for them to actually not take a loss, because providing this service, if you look at 1.5 for almost 10 FTE, looking at it from the sworn side, I think every 3 sworn is roughly $1 million. So, I believe this money is very well spent. It provides a lot of resources that we wouldn't be able to provide. I mean, we would have to have officers come and do this work, but they would be coming 5 or 6 hours later. So, there was a good competitive process. I do feel that we learned a lot, made some mistakes on funding. Our intent, though, is to really evaluate if the program was successful. Uh, Grants will only last you for building things out, expanding things further, but at some point, if the city and you all and the city leadership decide that this is a necessary and vital function that they would like to keep here, then we need to look for, other than just grant funding, a more permanent funding stream.
And that's kind of along the lines of some of the information I'd like to get, like, how are they gonna be sustainable? You know, like, what are their plans for, are they gonna keep coming back to ask for another $1 million every year? Why didn't, I mean, I know we have really hardworking staff, but why didn't they prepare 6 months ago for this? I know that there was a 200,000.
I think I have to take credit for that because when we lost some staffing, yeah, we didn't forecast as well as we should. That's why, to the speaker's point, we were under kind of the gun on figuring out how to keep this program vibrant, and we were able to work with Felton and work with City Council and community to identify some funding to keep it to the next fiscal year. So this is why we're here today, to try to get funding for the next fiscal year with the full intent that if we have grant funding that we can utilize for this program, we will use that first. But eventually this will likely need to go in front of City Council to determine permanent funding strategies.
And the urgency, I'm sorry.
No, yeah,
I feel like there's kind of a sense of why tonight? Why can't we wait until we get more time so that we can investigate and get more information and have more conversation? Why tonight? I know there was, the city council just recently approved an additional $200,000 that should take you guys through the end of June. And so it seems like we have the opportunity to continue this conversation.
Couple of very quick things. From what I understand is that the program is ending. And I completely agree with your approach of RFP, et cetera. But we've learned over the past year and a half that an RFP process and going into contract takes over 6 months. So if this program ends, our police officers are going to need to tend to calls that currently they are not. We're already understaffed. So it is a crisis situation. That's how we perceived it. And that's when last week we said, let's move forward. And also, just a quick add on that is whether we move a resolution to the council, saying we approved it, or we're not approving, the council is still going to make their own decision.
Of course. And that's
So-
why I think it's so important to have volunteers, council, although they get very little funding, they are paid elected officials as opposed to people who volunteer their time. And I certainly know, for one, I think many people know that I was attacked on the streets of Vallejo, almost died, had my neck cut from here all the way to here. And I don't think, I mean, I'm not to say that Felton, I don't think that Felton is the answer for that kind of crime.
And they wouldn't. But you know what they would be doing? Is Felton would be picking up some of the calls that the Vallejo police couldn't come and help you.
2 out of 8.
Hmm?
2 out of 8. The Vallejo Police Department did not come to help in that situation until after I was in the hospital, and, and they did, and they were effective in, prosecuting the person and everything. So on the streets of Vallejo.
Right.
And at the same time, they said 2 out of 8 of the calls. And the response time seems to be about like 2 days for every one call, $50 an hour for 7 staff. So it really, yeah, I think you have to write something and hand it to Monica to get to those.
So, and how was I going to coin this? So it costs you $1 million for 3 sworn officers. And in this situation where we have under, and that's going to supplement the police to lift the burden, and I don't mean to call it a burden, but a work burden off of your plate to put it into the hands of more capable people that focus and specialize on these types of situations is a cost saving. Plus, it should reduce your overtime, which is also a cost savings, because they wouldn't be doing overtime to do the priority 3 calls or whatever, you know, the other calls that these guys are picking up.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's, I know everybody lives and dies on data, but it's hard to quantify what they do. I'll just give you a very simple example. If you're living somewhere and there's a neighbor that is playing loud music hour after hour, uh, sometimes those non-violent calls become violent because there's no immediate attention. So that is one kind of example that I can give to what Felton and iHeart provide is they go out, they defuse situations in their 90-day report. They'll talk about some cases, very specific, where people won't take their medicine, and these verbal escalation then turn into violent escalations, and then we have to get involved. And so having this program in place to try to defuse and try to calm some folks down before it gets to a point where now it has to be a police response is very important.
I strongly support the plan and the services, and I remember back in 2022, the celebration when the grant was funded, and I admire very deeply Chief Williams' commitment to securing these funds. It was a profound commitment in partnering with community groups and individuals who were pursuing this. So we're thrilled to have it. Where this becomes complicated for me, who is not a social, I have no social work background whatsoever. So I see that Santa Rosa was just successful. Their chief reached out to the county of Sonoma and secured $3 million to support a 24/7 emergency response team that's already in place in Santa Rosa with no funding for the next fiscal year. The county has agreed to pay 100% for their iHeart equivalent. I'm not saying that would be possible here, but it was a big success for the city of Santa Rosa with its budget crisis. So, and I also don't know what their contract looks like, how they measure success. I don't know what their goals are, and so how their data is used to track progress regarding goals. I looked at our contract and seemed kind of comprehensive, and it looked like our consultant did a pretty good job of identifying what should be included in the contract. But for example, we were told at our last meeting that a lunch was catered, and I don't mean to imply, you know, a wine country caterer, but at the Caliber School. Our son taught at a Caliber School in Richmond for a couple of years, and I know what high standards they have and how dedicated their staff are and what wonderful engaged families enroll their children at charter, at Caliber public charter schools. But I wasn't clear how that came within the scope of iHeart for money from the amount budgeted by the city. I mean, I see how it builds goodwill and wellness, but that particular school campus is not one of the hot spots in Vallejo. But is my impression. I drive by there to go to the post office, and I know what kind of supervision and staff they have there and the families who send their children there. So I'm not objecting to that specific expenditure. I wasn't clear where it falls within the scope of the contract and how the city is overseeing the payment of invoices that come in through iHeart. And I don't want to go into the one example. The whole point is, how do we measure success? Because it's not 1,300 calls. I measure success when I hear the stories that we've heard tonight, okay? And they're powerful. It's powerful testimony from clients receiving services to nonprofit partners. So that is compelling, but how do we measure success? What are our goals? And part of it is relieving police officers from responding to calls that can be better handled by iHeart staff. We're all totally in support of that, but shouldn't we have an impact evaluation by an outside expert? And I'm not saying tomorrow, but to guide us in assessing how to concentrate our limited staff and resources. And I still don't understand how we've gone from my last question, and then I'll end. How did we go from 844 to 1.156 million? I'm not clear about how all costs include. Is that more than 20%?
Yeah, they are increasing their staffing.
Yeah,
And
okay.
that's what we really need.
Yeah.
Because we need a wider net.
Right, but I don't understand how some of this, the question that Chair Tibet asked, I heard the answer about how a halftime now costs 118, but a full-time only costs 107. I'm not knowledgeable enough to say, oh yeah, that's not sufficient for an accountant type. And we're serving as a fiduciary, making sure that all of our dollars are being carefully monitored. I can't tell yet because I wasn't given enough information to reach a conclusion. So I talked about many things, but the main one is an impact analysis to help us be sure we're measuring whether we're doing the most important things, which means defining our goals and what are our priorities.
I agree. I'll speak to just a couple of those points. There's a lot of good points that you did raise. iHeart does do a 90-day report, so that is one barometer that we do use.
We were given one, and given the length of time that the contract has been in place, I thought there would have been more. Are there more? Is there more than one?
There are. That was just used as an example. So
Okay.
I may have.
I would like to see all of them if I could, please.
I would also like to see all of them.
Yeah, we could forward that to you guys. And I know at the last city council meeting, I think there was a couple of suggestions on expanding some of those data points. I know just to kind of capture unsheltered folks. I was talking to Curtis late the other week, and we'd like to see how many juveniles also, potentially unsheltered juveniles or just juveniles as a whole. So
Is there racial data? I may not have reviewed everything.
Yes.
Hey, thank you. One last thing, I'd like to see how you could expand to support the Navigation Center and the Broadway project. And I don't see that in what's been presented to us. And those are both going to be centers for calls in the neighborhoods.
Absolutely. And that's why we are now capturing data, looking at the unsheltered as well as juvenile unsheltered. I know a lot of the information and questions that you're asking today was part of the 27-slide presentation that we went over pretty comprehensively on the 6th. You say maybe it's hard to quantify the impact of what we're doing. There were 1,374 calls, and what I had mentioned on Tuesday the 6th, 80% of those calls, no one responds. Let's say no iHeart, no one responds to those calls. And if you're dealing with individuals who are experiencing a mental health crisis and that call goes out and no one comes, it then becomes escalated to the point to where now you can't resolve it. It becomes a more prevalent crisis. The other,
I want to insert just, I can't believe more strongly in the importance of early intervention and doing this outreach. That's not an issue.
Thank you so much. And then I want to just address what the young lady said with respect to something that she experienced, and I can only imagine, my heart goes out to you. The thing is, we are now expanding services because there is an impact team response that goes out to 911 calls that law enforcement first goes out and triage and secures the incident. And then the iHeart team follows up, providing wraparound case management, target case management, and trauma-informed care to individuals who are victims of violence. That is a component of iHeart. Another component.
Excuse me, is that in the contract that, well, we haven't been shown a new contract, I don't believe. We've seen, late this afternoon, we got the contract entered into in 2024 and maybe in May, I believe. Is there a new contract that is under consideration?
It will be placed in the scope of work in terms of the expanded services. What I will say is when we started out in Vallejo, we learned based on the data that we had to now focus on proactive and reactive calls. Initially, when we started this, it was 911 calls getting from dispatch, right? And then we realized that there was a huge request for us to go out into the community and address from an evidence-based, evidence-informed, trauma-informed a restorative justice lens to support the community, right? So as I mentioned, they have the impact team response. There's also the homicide victim support. As I mentioned last Tuesday, on the 6th, excuse me, 2 weeks before, where someone hung themselves on a rafter for their children and relatives to see, and our team was first on scene. And that trauma is generational. Imagine the person had to stay in the rafter in a noose, hung, until we can get a medical examiner there. These are the type of calls that iHeart is going on, right? And this is a program that is supported by law enforcement and the community. It fills in that gap, that relationship gap that is happening all over these marginalized communities in terms of helping to build trust in the community and law enforcement. If you do not have anyone going to these 911 calls, the community will lose trust.
I
and
will
wreak
not,
havoc.
I will not go back. We are going to continue to provide these services. They are necessary, long overdue, and they're being provided in ways that I am proud of as a
Thank-
resident. But I would like to see, for example, what does the contract over in Antioch look like? What are their?
I sent you guys the numbers,
Yeah.
and I want to speak to that too.
Wait.
Go ahead.
And in Santa Rosa, if I would like to get an idea of what the market is for this kind of work. And we didn't, I saw information from Antioch and my pea brain, I couldn't match it up. I haven't matched it up in a way that is useful
Understood.
to me.
Understood.
Hey, Chief, there is a way to quantify it, and I can totally help you do that, based on the data that is even in here.
I
and
would,
data
I would
collected.
welcome your help.
Yeah, because we can show, for the 1.2 million that we're gonna spend here, I can probably prove that you'll probably be saving about 3 million. So the return on investment, I think, is here. It's just not presented in a way that everybody can understand it.
Sure. And I think, Felton, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are also in Antioch, so it's
Yes,
one of the same companies.
that's where
Yeah.
we started in Antioch.
Yeah.
It's
No,
the
I
Angelo
think-
Quinto Community Response Team. We have the second highest calls in the nation.
Can I ask for a point of order? Sorry, from Monica and the lawyer. If you guys could help us kind of manage like the public speaking and like just remind everyone of the expectations and
I'm sorry, I actually am the associate director of the Michigan School Program. I also just
They're a part of the presentation.
oh, absolutely,
I
but
think, iHeart, I think is part of the presentation, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I'm looking at your organizational chart. Who on this organizational chart provide the wraparound service?
Everyone. So you have the EMT, you have the crisis response specialist, and you have the mental health rehabilitation specialist. It's a multidisciplinary team. So when they go out on a 911 call, they do an assessment, a medical assessment. They also do a substance use disorder assessment, and they do a behavioral health, mental health assessment. And based on where that individual lands, if it's more prevalent in terms of the mental health crisis, they are connected to the mental health rehabilitation specialist. If their health is more prevalent, more prominent, you have the EMT doing the vitals and connecting them to a primary care physician. And then you have the peer and case managers that's doing the wraparound target case management. It's a multidisciplinary team approach.
So, I don't know if this is for you or for the chief. And I'm speaking on the EMTs. If I have an emergency situation, wouldn't an EMT show up anyway?
Yeah, so from an operational perspective, we can do joint responses. So for example, if the incident involved something where the police department needed to be there, then we would show up with iHeart. If,
No.
but if,
I
yeah,
understand.
let me give you the example with the EMT, because I think that's your question. So these EMTs are not made to do or made to perform real heavy-duty medical aid. They can provide basic triage aid, but there's nothing precluding us from calling in medical or fire personnel or having a tri-response. And then once those other responders, such as medical folks, are no longer needed, or if PD is no longer needed, then they peel off and then the iHeart team remains there to finish up the services.
And let me answer your question directly. You said if there's an emergency situation, when the EMT show up anyway? They're not showing up with a mental health rehabilitation specialist, and they're not showing up with a case manager. They're showing up with an EMT and a paramedic. And you know what they're doing? They're going to load and
So I
go,
won't,
take their vitals, and they're gonna put them in the
so
ambulance.
I won't
put them
lose
on the
my
night.
thought.
Okay,
If they're gonna show up anyway, right?
let's say they show
And
up
I-
anyway.
and all I need now is the iHeart representative.
Okay,
So to me, we're kind of double dipping, right? We got EMTs that can show up anyway, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 EMTs that you're asking for to be staffed.
it's a multidisciplinary team. You have an EMT, you have a mental health
I know,
rehabilitation. So let's say you come up and you
no,
have a,
listen.
go ahead.
Listen, I hear what you're saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying is this: if an EMT is going to show up, and
By themselves.
right by themselves,
I'm having a mental health crisis.
right, and so all I need when this EMT show up is for iHeart to show up with the EMT. If the city already pays for EMT services,
So you're saying, so iHeart shows up in tandem with the EMS.
yes,
EMS is part of the county.
but they're going to show up anyway, right?
If they do show up, they're not going to be able to sustain and offer long-term care. So you're saying,
Right, so
you're
that's where
saying,
iHeart would then come in.
okay, but look at the timeline. Why would you have an EMT show up and iHeart show up on the same call? Because
Well,
now
this is just-
there's resources that can be aligned to someone who is an EMT paramedic that is more congruent to someone who's having a viable medical issue.
But didn't you just say an EMT gonna show up? With,
I think I think I know what you're getting at, Commissioner Jones. Let me just see if I'm understanding you. So I think what you're saying is that if there is a event that requires an EMT anyways, like
Right.
EMS, that they will respond, and then you don't need the EMT from iHeart, you just need the mental health professional to then respond. I think that part of, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the operational program is to really kind of have a partner with you. So the intent of that team really is to triage any very minor medical aid that might be needed until the EMS arrives. And then when the EMS arrives, they provide additional care if needed, or they leave. And so I think operationally, even in policing, we pair people up. So when we go to a call, because you never know when you're dealing with unpredictable circumstances, you may need somebody there to help you. I think the way this team was formed, we didn't need 2 mental health clinicians there, and we didn't need 2 EMTs there. So we had one of each to provide the different type of services that each one of them specializes in.
I'd like to ask the chairman if, I mean, I know there's a lot of information that's kind of come to us. I think all of us agree that this is an important function. I think all of us agree that Pelton has done good work this year. I think all of us have questions. It seems like one person, one of the 7 commissioners completely had all of their questions answered. But in my estimation, there are at least 3 or 4 of us who have not had our questions answered. So in that spirit, I'd like to move that we postpone this, this motion until we have more information. We can say specifically, to be able to see all of the 90-day, all of the reports that Felton has done, to be able to get a new, see the new extended contract so that all of us can have that same information. To also see if we can get some clear performance benchmarks and community-informed goals. And I would personally like to see some partnerships with other not people who've been in this community doing this work, like Vallejo Together, like Acts, House of Acts. I'd like to see some kind of relationship with people who already have 20, 30, 40 years. Global Center for Success have been doing this work in this community. Those are some of the things that I would like to see. But the motion is that we ask for more information and postpone the vote today.
I would like some additional information, including how the contract could be expanded to serve the Navigation Center and the Broadway Center. I have no thoughts about how that might be done or what the needs are, but I would certainly like it to be considered now because we're opening both of those soon. And so that's one more thing I would like addressed in a further report. Maybe that's too hard to do. I have no idea, but we have 2 months of funding. Well, we have 6 weeks, roughly, not even a full 6 weeks. But I myself would like to know a little bit about market rates for, and you know Antioch better than anybody else and can educate me.
Excuse me, commissioners, there's a motion on the
Public
floor.
information.
There's a motion on the floor, though, that supersedes
Yeah.
all debate that needs to be dealt with first, and you can go back and talk
Yeah.
about whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I make a motion that we postpone this decision. So we're waiting for a second, or?
I second the motion.
Chair Tibet.
Absent.
I'm sorry, sir, I
I'm
couldn't
an
hear you.
absentee. I'm not gonna vote. Is it-
Abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Is that okay?
Give me just a minute.
I'd like to make a motion that we specify.
We're in the middle of a vote
Yeah,
first. You did. You did.
Commissioner Brazenio,
Absolutely not.
Commissioner Farrell,
Absolutely, yes, with amendments specifying those topics about which we would like to hear more information.
thank you. Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Santos. It passes. Yeah, and
Yes.
So we need to put a time frame on when we're going to get this information, because in 6 weeks, these guys are gone. So hooray for us. So we need to get a time frame where we can get this information, so that way we can spend another 4 hours here and talk about it and decide.
There was a question from Commissioner McDonald. Oh, okay, around if we would come back.
Oh, well, yeah.
Is this related to the motion on the floor? Yeah, or the motion that just passed. The reason that we're here is that, the reason that we're here. Felton isn't here making the request from you. We were asked to come in support of Vallejo PD's request to keep us here. And so the questions around, our process and partnerships and all of that,
It's already decided.
there was,
But,
we were very far in arrears in payment, just quite frankly, and Vallejo didn't pay their bills. And so we were in a situation where we had to make a hard call related to services. And now we're back at that place to have to make that hard call.
Right, and then if they lose all of their people, they have to go back out and recruit, which means it's additional cost, and it's going to cost Vallejo more money.
So I understood and made assumptions and now have additional information. I understood with the bridge funding that the police department identified I understood that you were fully funded through the end of June and that we could have another meeting next week, for example. I don't know what's reasonable, but now I'm receiving new information that I didn't understand on May
Our
6th.
CEO was really clear at the council meeting, and he was really clear, um, actually at this very meeting. He was very clear.
He
And-
absolutely was. And that's why I know the urgency. And I'm also an operations person who runs programs
Yeah.
and understands now the additional costs that'll incur.
Exactly.
And cost Vallejo, which
Mhm.
we are trying to avoid because of redundancy of doing things and not doing things correctly. And then we end up spending more money on things that we shouldn't be spending money on.
So my understanding then in that situation is that you're asking Measure P to bail out BPD for their lack of foresight and making this proposal 6 months ago.
It would have been over a year and a half ago. I don't think Chief was there. And it's not a bail, it could be a bailout, but there's no more funding. The funding that they had went away. You can thank
Well,
the
I would hope-
administration for that.
I would hope that we would make do the way we always do in Vallejo as Americans, that with the nonprofits, the 130 nonprofits that we have here, that we would 2 by 2 go around district to district, working, visiting homes, working on restorative justice. I just feel like we have a lot of resources in this community, a lot of people, Vallejo Together, a lot of people who've been doing this work for many years.
And
who
now
are
we're gonna
better
use-
situation, who are better prepared if they had received this $1 million last year, then, and if they received this $1 million this year, I believe that the results will be very different.
And now we're not going to have this resource.
So-
And you can expect the outreach and going into the communities, going into the schools, trying to do preventative work, all the wraparound services that they've been doing, everything that they've been giving to our community is going away July 1.
My expectation is that this committee and the council can act well before July 1st. However, iHeart has not caused any of these problems and should not suffer as a
That's-
result. And I appreciate very much that the chief acknowledged there could have been better monitoring of this contract, and I don't want to revisit that in any way. We're moving on. iHeart must be funded to continue its services, in my opinion. But I also feel that when we get presented with crises and can't educate ourselves, and I am not knowledgeable about project staffing or social services, as I've explained, and you are educating me, and I'm grateful for it, and also all of the speakers who've addressed us tonight. So I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and would like to recommend that we take a recess.
So when would you need us to come back in? Because on the 6th, we had a pretty comprehensive presentation that answered a lot of the questions,
Well,
that addressed a lot of questions that you raised.
I don't remember comparative cost data for staff in cities that have similar emergency response teams. I don't remember that.
We can provide that. The other thing is, I want to address a couple of questions that you two. iHeart works collaboratively with community stakeholders throughout the city. We don't do this by ourselves, and I just want to make that clear.
Well, I have heard from at least 3 different organizations who said they reached out and did not get a collaborative or even a response of call back. These are established 20-year-old organizations in our community. So that's the feedback that I'm getting. I've talked to probably about 15 different people, and overwhelmingly, the concern is that you guys are not known and respected in this community.
Really?
That's the feedback from the 15
Okay.
people that I spoke to. That the presentation, that you guys have, you have a good program, but it's spread too thin across too many different areas. And it's not directly focusing only on the response the emergency response, like, you know, going to the schools, all of these. So these were things that, this is what I'm hearing when I talk to people.
Through-
I was
Just real
going
quick through
to,
the chair, can I just get clarification, just so we're all clear on the next meeting, whenever that may be, next week, the following? What is the information I feel like you guys would need to have ahead of time to be able to make an informed decision? So I heard comparative cost data.
Memorandums of understanding is something I would like to see. I mean, that may or may not be something that, that Felton is yes, with local organizations here.
Can you name a few so we can know?
Vallejo Together, House of Acts, Vernus House. Yeah, no, they spoke, but there's no memorandum of understanding. There's no formal agreement. They get no funding when they take people off the streets for you guys, right? What do they get? It makes your numbers look good, but how does that benefit them?
So what we have done with Vernon House specifically, as we get clients that need emergency housing, part of our client fund, we pay for that emergency housing. So it wasn't like, hey, do us a favor. We actually place these individuals and pay for their housing for a period of time. To the question of Commissioner Jones, when you asked the question of if an emergency paramedic or EMT was needed, all calls are vetted through 911 dispatch. If a person is having a medical emergency, that's not an iHeart call. If an act of crime is happening, that's not an iHeart call. We may get a call that's described as a welfare check. And me, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I might not know or identify medical signs as I go onto a call, but my EMT can. This person looks a particular way, we need paramedics. Let's radio and get a paramedic here. That I don't have, or community responders don't have that training. So going into a situation, not knowing what we may get, it may be, again, a welfare check, but it can be behavioral health, mental health, or medical. With that multidisciplinary team, we're able to identify that on the spot and then get the appropriate resource there. I hope that better answers your question.
A period of 4 days to 30 days. And it was one-time payments for all of those people. And the payment was for $1,800. That does not cover what they needed to pay. And we still have to at no cost. So, and we didn't get money from them, so they do not receive no amount of funding that we need from IHOP for those.
Where do you
That
normally get funding from? Where do you normally get funding from for the house?
Medi-Cal.
Please approach the podium.
So,
ma'am,
so we're
if you
really.
could- if you could please use the
really
podium.
running far
and-
afield of where we should be. This was an item about iHeart, and we're now morphing into other nonprofits. So I think you've already made a decision, and you want this to come back. I think the question is now when that's going to happen.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine, because then
Yeah,
we
And
can
if we
explain
What
that.
information, what
Yeah.
information?
And what information you want
specifically?
staff to bring
Correct.
back.
Yeah, if we could circle back to Chief Tall.
And so I've heard comparative cost data analysis and any MOUs that are existing.
I would like to receive a recommendation about an impact assessment of the services. That I would like to see a new contract. I assume there will be a new one, or maybe the old one is just being extended. We're not clear. That's not a major point to be addressed tonight, but I would also like more clarity about goals and metrics for success. And again, I assume that there are other agencies who've had somewhat similar services in place, and Antioch may be one where they have learned through their longer period of similar services.
Can I just clarify, is that goal or metrics for success, is that the same as
No,
the impact assessment?
they can be,
How is it different, I guess, is what I'm
Oh.
asking.
so they are related, but I don't know. I would like us to talk to someone who assesses the success of programs like this, who could do a formal neutral assessment for us. What is working, what could be improved, and how it might be expanded, and what metrics may help us in doing this as efficiently as possible.
Potentially by next week?
No, I would like some information about how that could be done.
Okay.
I'd also like to see all of the reports that iHeart has turned in over the year. You said every 30 days they give a report? Every 90 days, okay. I'd like to see those reports.
Okay, and we don't have a new contract. We are in the process of working on that, so I would imagine that's not going to be done relatively quick because we have until the end of June to finish that. So I can provide the current contract if that's helpful.
Or a draft.
We got it late this afternoon, which again made it nearly impossible for all of us to be prepared for today, but thank you, we did receive it.
Okay, great. Anything else?
There's a significant difference in the new contract than the old contract. So can we at least get a draft of the new contract? And another statement I would like to make. Ma'am, I wish you had led with that statement you made, because it shed so much light on the finances and what you guys are asking for and why you're asking for it, right? So that was so helpful for me, because I'm thinking they've tripled the amount of money. So if I heard you correctly, well, we didn't get our money how we were supposed to get our money. So we're asking for our money up front, and we want to know that we have a solid, right? So, and again, had you led with that, that probably would have helped me a lot, because I'm trying to figure out how is it that we are asking for this amount of money. And again, it's really the city of Vallejo and the Vallejo PD's fault, right? That we're even here. And that the money was mismanaged and you guys wasn't paid how you should have been paid properly. And so now you're asking, this is what we should be getting. We're not giving any more waivers and no fee advances and discounts on our services. This is what we want, and this is what we should be getting. Now, had I heard that at the beginning, I would have had a different, from you, I would have had a different outlook at this moment, right? So thank you for saying that, even if it was at the last moment.
I'd also like to see a reduced amount. I don't see any reason that that Measure P has to carry the whole load for the contract for the whole year. So at least, no more than $1 million, and yeah, and I would hope that some of that money is going to, like I said, to local nonprofits like Verna's House. I would like to see how they are in the budget, how Vallejo Together is in the budget, how you're going to be working on some of the navigation and the homeless services, how that's in the budget. Those are the goals that we're supposed to be spending this money on. That's why the people voted for P.
No,
It
people
was
voted for,
definitely not to support BPD. That was not why people voted for Measure P.
the main reason for this Measure P to be done was for the roads. This is a supplementary one. Chief, when you pick up someone, a sworn officer picks someone up and they bring them to Verna House, how much do you guys pay?
0.
So why is there a different standard then for iHeart? Why would iHeart have to pay something different? That's one of my questions. And then this, shoot, I forgot what it said.
Mainly because that's what they stated they did.
I think they did it, but I don't think it's the standard.
Well,
what the
we're not talking about standards. We're going by what they stated, and well, we can go
Well, they
on and
will.
on. We can go on and on. I think this conversation can be taken at a different time. So I say we move to the next thing on the agenda.
I second it.
We have a couple more questions before we do that. When do you want us to come back? That's a problematic because it's difficult to get space.
Is
I-
next Tuesday reasonable? With
Next
the
Tuesday, there's a council meeting,
There's a
so that's impossible.
Yeah. I would have to check the calendar, Randy, to see the next availability. Yeah, we do have the second Monday, open already reserved.
Yeah, okay,
So that would probably be the closest,
that would be next month.
correct, June.
That would be next Monday?
No, the second
Second
Monday
Monday
in
of
June.
We know is open.
I would prefer an earlier date, but I understand we can't know what options may exist tonight.
So that would be June 9th, which
Correct.
means. Yep.
Well, it'd be helpful if we can get the information as soon as possible, so we can, Monica can email the information, from the chief. That way, come June 9th, we should have very little questions. If we do, if the opportunity presents itself, we can ask Felton or iHeart, probably via email or something. Randy, would that be?
I'd rather you didn't do that.
No, we send the questions to, Monica.
Yeah, no, that's too much like a meeting for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How come we're not considering, June 3rd? We jumped
We don't know
into-
if we have space on that date or not. We know we have space on June 9th. That's why we threw out June
Because
9th.
if time is of essence to send this to the council,
Correct, because
Right.
there is a two-step process
Yes.
to be able to fund this before June 1. I don't think June 9th will make it.
We met in your law library, or conference room one time, I believe. I- That worked.
there was no public.
I don't recall what we did that for, but
I can definitely check with the city clerk's office first thing tomorrow and then propose, yeah, I can poll you for the subsequent closest date.
I will not be available next week.
Thank you.
So we're tentatively looking at alternative dates, given the availability, or if possible, the 3rd, but 9th is the most guaranteed date. And we heard from Chief that if we go to 9th, council won't be able to approve it, and then it won't be in the budget. So that's.
That's not necessarily true. Council can, if they choose to, approve it. If they're saying that, if they're not gonna wait on us, then council can approve it. So that's not a point of contention for me.
well, I think just so that the board understands the process, so they have to do a budget adjustment. That requires 2 council meetings. They can't do it in one, and because they have to take notice at a council meeting, and then they have to wait. They can't have a meeting until 5 days after that to consider the actual item, to approve the item. So it will require 2 council meetings to do.
Commissioner Bersenio, are you available on the 9th?
On the 9th, I'll be around.
I move that we postpone until June 9th.
That's too late. The program will close down on July 1. So we need to look either this week, but that's only if you guys get the information that you need. Or next week I'm traveling. And since these meetings go until, and I'll be on the East Coast, so I'm not going to be up until 3 in the morning. So I will, if we can put a limit, I could do via Zoom next week. Otherwise, then you're looking at first week in June if you're for a special meeting, or June 9th, of which we know that is too late.
Can you possibly turn around the paperwork for our questions within a week, Chief?
Probably not a very comprehensive one. So you're not going to have much more data than I think you have today, but we'll do our best.
I don't think we're going to be able to make a decision on this until we hear back from the city, and
I can make a decision.
We'll find out what space is available and when we can have a meeting and let you know.
thank you.
Did we get a date?
We have to check to see what space is available when. We
Okay.
know June 9th is available, but if we can do it earlier, we can put dates out to the board and let them decide.
Thank you, Chief. So, the next item is, the Measure P Oversight Committee to consider agendizing the consideration of limiting presentations to 15 minutes.
So moved.
Second,
All right, motion made by Farrell, second by Brazenio. Chair Tibet,
Yes.
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 Jones,
Yes.
McDonald,
I have a question about that, so I'm not sure if I should abstain until I have my question answered.
This is only to vote to put it on the agenda.
Oh, to
It'll
put it on the
actually-
agenda.
it'll
Okay,
actually
then
be
yes.
Considered
Sorry.
at another
Thank
meeting.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
thank you. And Commissioner Santos. Thank you.
Moving forward, the next item is Measure P Oversight Committee to consider agendizing the consideration of requiring departments to report any funds that have not been used within 200 days of allocation.
So moved.
I second.
Chair
And again-
Tibet,
And again,
Yes.
board, this is to put it on the agenda to
Yes.
consider.
yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Tibet,
Yes.
Commissioner Brazenio.
Yes.
Commissioner Farrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Santos.
Yes, sir.
It passes. Thank you. To agendize.
Perfect. So the next item is information calendar.
We have no matters from information tonight.
The following item is future agenda items.
We do have one speaker for future agenda items. That is Hugh Kimber.
Good evening. How are you? So I believe that one of the parts of the P is addressing quality of life issues, right? So I want to talk about a possible quality of life issue that results in improved safety, increased local revenue, and grassroots social organizations. Now, I'm part of the Oddfellows Lodge, which is right up here on Georgia Street, one of your historic fraternal organizations here. And traditionally, we provide a lot of ways to give back to community, helping the less fortunate, helping out the sick. We also have buildings, physical buildings here in town that provide event areas for community events, social events, positive social events. And the buildings also provide rental space that brings in, of course, interesting things like our Brick Mania, our Lego store, among other stores that bring in and attract visitors and create foot traffic. Now, when you got foot traffic, you've got safer streets. People feel better about Vallejo. They come here to shop, they come here to socialize, and it creates more of an atmosphere of safety, which helps out a lot of what the concerns are here with Measure P. But our local fraternal organizations, we're all self-funded. You know, we're self-funded only by membership dues, the rents that we collect, and some of the events that we throw. So we're always running on a shoestring. But what we do for the community also is when we're maintaining our buildings, we're maintaining the areas around it, the alleys, the streets. We try and improve things, try and get rid of that broken window atmosphere and really make the downtown area, especially our area, look very attractive, makes it look safer, less problems, less garbage on the street. So what our organization actually does, maintaining our building, having events, we touch upon keeping public spaces safe and clean, preventing blight and dumping. We don't let people dump around the buildings, and attracting and retaining local jobs and businesses. So the question that I have is, how can we help out these community organizations that run on a shoestring? I mean, they're self-funded, they are nonprofits, and they create wholesome social engagement, income to the community, and an atmosphere of safe streets. So as a representative of the Odd Fellows, I'm sort of asking the board, would, you know, does the board and does the measure provide any opportunity to provide funding to these 501c8 organizations that are grassrooted here in town, historical? Our lodge has been around for 160 years. And does Measure P provide any possibility of helping out these grassroots organizations that actually create a safer and a better atmosphere here in Vallejo?
Time.
Thank you.
Any further comments, remarks from the commission? And we will adjourn.